Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
And today we're bringing you a review of the Black Fencer Smallsword.
Da, 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 da.
I'd like to say we didn't rehearse that, but we've done like 3 takes of this now and we have, so appreciate that.
Sorry.
Okay, so this is quite an unusual product. Most small swords that people are using out there are épée-bladed weapons, whether they're using foil components for the hilt or sort of more small swordy type hilts. This is, like most Black Fencer products, is a synthetic blade. And this is Sam's sword, and he got it because he really wanted something that he could do more early period small swords. So really, you're thinking sort of Sir William Hope and that kind of period. And he wanted to. The club that we were attending was pretty much a mostly. Would you say more like saber back swords?
Yeah, the small sword was in small number, so
absolutely,
I think, yeah.
And Sam wants to be able to. I don't know why I'm speaking for you here, but
should I interrupt?
Yeah, please do.
So I recently went. Well, this is 2 years ago now. So I went to a fight camp and went to a class where it was small sword against back sword, which was a fantastic class. And if it's ever repeated, if you see it on a timetable anywhere, I highly recommend it.
Plug for Dr. Milo Thurston over at the Lineker School of Defence.
Definitely. I did that lesson and found it fantastic. And the idea that a small sword, you could use it to defend yourself against kind of something like, I don't know, heavier weapon, a cutting weapon, was really intriguing. But of course, there's not many small sword options out there that offer that you can do safely without risk of the blade snapping, and that's when Black Fencer somehow entered my dreams and read my mind, and they created this wonderful product which is perfect for what I wanted to do. And as Matt has already said, in the club that we both attended, there's not many small sword enthusiasts there, so this is a very good bit of kit to go against people who you want to use small sword for, however they are more saber inclined, or even longsword. For this has gone against a longsword and has come out alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic product. I've used it a little bit. Sam's more of the small sword of the two of us, although I'm very keen on small sword myself. It's a really intriguing product because it fills that gap between sort of very late period rapier and what we think of as a more classical type of small sword. This is, by nature of it having a synthetic blade, which is chunkier than an épée blade. This is heavier, but again, it's not outside the range for that kind of late 17th, early. Have I got those dates right? Yeah, so late 1600s, early 1700s type small sword. Again, exactly the kind of weapon that we really think of when doing Sir William Hope. And it has to be really to have a chance of really realistically standing up to things like back swords and Highland broadswords and things that we know that Sir William Hope was envisaging his small sword going up against, because he tells us so. What are your impressions having actually fought with this? How does it handle compared to say a saber?
So well, comparing it to a saber, I mean, I've used this against sabers and it's held its own extremely well. As I said, it's really good for if you're wanting to focus on your thrust work, on your point work, and that's something that I have found has made me a better fencer, because it's made me appreciate more the use of the thrust. So it's improved my saber game, which is really good. The only thing I would say, kind of like with this, the flex is good. It's still kind of like it still kind of hits hard, kind of. When you get a thrust in. I mean, you've received a few.
It is painful. I will say, though, it's no more painful than most Black Fencer or synthetic products are, or indeed being thrust by a full weight steel sword. There's going to be a bit of pain. It's momentary.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I mean,
fencing glory is forever.
Yes, definitely. So but it said it's got good flex. Like the feel is good, in sense as in it's, even though yes it is heavier, as Matt said, it has to be, because it's got to take the impact from the other Black Fencer crew. So it is a bit heavier, but however I don't tend to notice it when I'm sparring. It doesn't. Because it is lighter than a normal Black Fencer. So if I was comparing it to the saber or to the cutlass or the basket, say that I tire when I'm sparring with this. However, this it takes me a lot longer. Of course, I do have to use a larger glove with this if I'm sparring against something that's heavier. But that's the great thing about this product wise, as you can see, like the handle's got quite a lot of room and space. So the Red Dragon sparring glove fits perfectly in here, and I've still got quite good maneuverability. However, it's not as much as I'd like to have as with using Smallsword. You haven't got as much wrist mobility and that dexterity that you would expect with Smallsword. It's not as quick and as nippy as a Smallsword should be in order to kind of achieve superiority in a fight, shall we say. So there's that. It is the only option, though, at the moment with regards to synthetics.
Synthetic
Smallsword. It's the only option that there is if you are interested in doing this. Unless, of course, there is another option, which if there is, please feel free to put that in the comments below, because I, as a Smallsword enthusiast, and Matt as well, we'd love to know if there were other options.
Unless you're watching this 5 years from now and there's something else out, in which case don't bother, because we probably already
found it, and there's probably a video.
He's definitely bought it
I've definitely bought it right now, yeah. So I think, but I would say this is good for someone who wants to do Smallsword against other weapons. However, if you only want to do Smallsword, and if you're in a Smallsword group, I would say, well, we both agree, it's not really the product for just Smallsworders.
I think that is the thing, is that this is a product that's sort of designed so that you can use a Smallsword up against other weapons. If you're interested in doing Smallsword on Smallsword, or if you're interested in specifically later periods, so classical era swordsmanship like Angelo, Labatt, people like that, the sort of more civilianized Smallsword, then you probably will want to go with a lighter steel weapon. And of course, I mean, we have those anyway. So it's, this is, again, it's filling a niche. That's all it's doing.
It's got its own brand. It said you have to be, it's something you've got to want to do, because the wait time for this is quite long, because they're not readily available. They are made per order. There aren't many of them out there that I've seen. I think I've seen one.
It's quite rare to see these, which is one of the things that spurred us on to make this review. But yeah, these are and the other thing is you probably won't find these at many resellers.
No,
because it's not a particularly popular model. Whereas you'll find Black Fencer sabres and long swords and side swords at resellers. This you will have to put in some waiting time for. It's not that long. It's between 2 and 3 months usually.
And I would say personally, because this is an interest of mine, for the niche it fills and for what how it allows me to spar against a sabre, a synthetic sabre, a synthetic, even arming swords and other things, just for interest. And it's just a bit of fun as well, which of course HEMA has to have the fun in it as well. I would say the price is very reasonable, and the waiting time is very reasonable, because it's a quality product you're going to get. The only other negative, besides kind of saying that you don't really want this if you are just doing it in a Smallsword group, because there are other options available, of course, for steel Smallsword, which of course, as Matt's already said, we have, is that I have had to do a tiny bit of recorrection onto the handle. I'm not sure if it could be seen in the camera here, but if I hold it as close as possible, you might be able to see that the ring here has been knocked back slightly, and the guard here has taken a bit of a blow. Not quite sure when it happened. It'll probably be one of the videos that's on the channel. But in that blow, it's bent it backwards. And I have been able to use a hammer to recorrect it as much as possible. But that's just something worthwhile knowing, that if you are using these against mixed other weapons in a mixed weapon sparring match, be careful with your guard. But I'd rather it be my guard than my fingers. So. All praise the guard. Praise be. So.
Absolutely, and I think that's the point as well. With something like this hilt, historically speaking, although we know from Hope it was taken up against, or was at least people thought it could be taken up against heavier weapons. This hilt is not designed for going up against cut-centric weapons. It is designed to be used against itself in a primarily dueling setting. Although, of course, small swords were carried in a multitude of contexts, both for civilian and in military use. Officers in the field did carry small swords, but bear that in mind, that even though this is probably more heavily engineered than most historical small swords, because this is designed to take a regular beating, it is still not the strongest of hilt designs.
No, definitely not.
That being said, though, the knuckle bow itself is actually perfectly fine and is probably just as strong as the one they have on their sabre.
Yes.
So it's pretty good. Just on a quick side note, this is also very similar to the Spadroon.
Of course,
that
yes.
is on offer for Black Fencer, which I know is actually quite a popular sword at the moment.
And is a good product.
Very good product, yeah. I think you were saying, weren't you, that the only real differences are, we think, the finger rings.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And the blade on this is slightly narrower and slightly longer. But you could certainly, if you wanted to, you could use this to fulfill both roles as both a small sword trainer and a Spadroon, if that was something you wanted to.
Yeah, definitely.
To
It's something I have done as well. So in sparring matches, I've used this as a Spadroon. Of course, I tend to lean towards small sword, but have used it as Spadroon as well. So
so it fills a couple of niches there. So you know, it works on a multitude of planes, which is always nice. You know, it saves you having to buy two pieces of equipment, which are broadly quite similar. I think if you stood them together, most people wouldn't really be able to tell many differences. I will say though, this definitely feels a lot more thrust-centric than the Spadroon does.
Yes, definitely, yes.
Having handled two types of variants of the Black Fencer Spadroon, this definitely feels more thrust-centric. And I personally think this is actually a nicer feeling product. But again, how a blade feels is really down to a personal
It's down to the person who's using it, and down to your own personal preference when you come to HEMA. So so kind of in summary, really a great product if you're interested in the things we brought up in the video. So you're mixed weapon sparring and you want to bring this up against other things, and you're interested in small sword, especially earlier small sword, then yeah, this is kind of the product for you. Not so much the product for you if you are just someone who uses the small sword in a small sword group, shall we say.
Yeah.
So,
but if you want to be the messiah of small sword and bring the small sword to your club when they don't do it, then this might be the weapon for you.
be brave, it's worth it.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.